This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
The panel, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Suna Ashraf, third Afama. First of all, to answer the question that was posed to Team Affirmative by the first negator. One, for example, when using the Uganda airline, we are creating development for both. One, if I told somebody from Egypt is coming to Uganda, they are not going to travel by bus. No, they are going to use the airport, of which they have to pay. They have, we have to construct an airport. That is development, and it is benefiting both the locals and the citizens of the other country. Dear judges, to continue. The second negator posed the question, how are we going to deal with the exchange earnings, dear judges? Dear judges, the currency of Uganda is not the same as the currency of Egypt, dear judges. According to the way we contextualized the definition of domestic tourism, dear judges. We looked at domestic tourism being tourism within the African continent. If at all we are going to help create a sustainable and stable economic growth for all African countries, dear judges. Dear judges, the major clash points in tonight's resolution, please pause it at that, you will give it in the last minute. The major clash point in tonight's resolution is the definition or the characterization of the definitions. Which definitions we have? Domestic tourism and international tourism. Dear judges, Team Negative come and tell us that actually what we've come up with, the characterization we've come up with is actually not they are not siding with us, of which we say African countries allowed to move within their boundary of Africa, as Africa. And they said they will take it as tourism of a country of citizens of a specific country within their boundary, dear judges. But we are looking at helping African countries, not an African country, dear judges. If at all we are going to achieve a sustainable and stable economic growth for all countries in Africa, we are going to deal with the African boundary. Dear judges, to continue, Team Negative come and actually do not define for us what they take international tourism as. So we as Team Affirmative, we came and said that we are taking international tourism as allowing African citizens to move from Africa to any other continent and vice versa, dear judges. If at all we are having that and citizens of African countries are not able to develop their own countries, then do we expect people from other countries to come and develop our country? No. Charity starts at home. If it's not starting within your country, I don't know where it's going to take you to. Dear judges, looking at the points we Team Affirmative have lined up, we've told you that there is job creation and employment, there is infrastructure development, dear judges, there is revenue contributions, tourism recovery, infrastructure development, reducing on the dependence on external markets, like they've told us that there is export earnings. So we are going we are disagreeing with that, because if at all you're going to depend on other countries, of which those countries are you're calling for international tourism, it means and we are seeing international tourism international tourists coming in African countries, mostly in the times of they experience winter. It means we are going to wait for winter to come for our countries to start earning. Dear judges, that is very irrelevant. That is not going to help us to gain or to reach the sustainable and stable economic growth that we are advocate or we are trying to reach, dear judges. Dear judges, if at all we are to consider the points given,
Result, Rima numbers the Lakeside College Luzira. For our sustainable and stable economic growth, African countries should prioritize. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take note of the key terms in this resolution. African countries should prioritize domestic tourism over international tourism. We come as team negators. Lakeside College Luzira. Ladies and gentlemen, no man is an island. Ladies and gentlemen, we as negatives, we are looking for help. We are looking at how we can sustainably promote the economic growth of African countries. This is why we are looking at international tourism as one of the key factors that can bring in a lot of economic growth, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, speakers have been speaking about infrastructure development of jobs, ladies and gentlemen. But I would like to inform them that equally, international tourism promotes jobs, ladies and gentlemen. Gives, as our second speaker said, ladies and gentlemen, it provides jobs. And when we look at countries that have internationally benefited, ladies and gentlemen, we look at Morocco, ladies and gentlemen. Our second speaker came and proved to you how Morocco is benefiting from international tourism. It has created jobs, ladies and gentlemen, and 7% of Morocco's GDP, with some of 827,000 people, and this comes from economictimes.com, ladies and gentlemen. We look at economic sustainability, ladies and gentlemen. We are looking for jobs. They are going to promote jobs. International tourism is promoting jobs, ladies and gentlemen. Let's look at the small and medium enterprises, ladies and gentlemen. We are looking at the hotels. We are looking at the retail shops. We are looking at agriculture itself. We are looking at transport. When people travel from abroad to come to our country as international tourism, ladies and gentlemen, jobs are being promoted. Many factors are being considered. Roads are being developed, ladies and gentlemen. And in a way, if you look at it closely, ladies and gentlemen, once you promote international tourism, in a way you're fostering domestic tourism. How? Roads are going to be constructed, meaning it will be easier for a person within a country to move to a specific tourist attraction, ladies and gentlemen. When we look at other factors that I have been talking about Egypt and Uganda, ladies and gentlemen, our first speaker came and defined to you what we are taking as international and what we are taking as domestic tourism, ladies and gentlemen. And equally the same, ladies and gentlemen, dear judges, the currency in African countries is typically low compared to that of international currency, ladies and gentlemen. You cannot consider a Kenyan shilling, a Ugandan shilling to a dollar, ladies and gentlemen. Once more tourists come, more earnings are going to be considered, ladies and gentlemen, and people will earn more jobs, infrastructure will be developed. And according to that, we spoke of relations, ladies and gentlemen. They are speaking about independence, but we are talking about things that are going to help us. We are thinking about people. We are working together with international countries so that they can help us, so that more earnings can come, ladies and gentlemen. And they came and spoke about season, ladies and gentlemen. As African countries, they can say that, as African countries, we can say that maybe when those favorable seasons come, we lower the prices so that more tourists can come in. And with the seasons they have been talking about, if there are many seasons, if there are, for instance, seasons like winter, then we can lower the costs so that we attract more tourists, ladies and gentlemen. We are looking at a sustainable, ladies and gentlemen, sustainable. What is going to give us more currency? And our speakers have been giving you a question which you have not answered, ladies and gentlemen. We said, given that many African countries have low average incomes, how will domestic tourism sustain the high revenue year-round, ladies and gentlemen? This comes after us analyzing that 29% of Africans live in extreme poverty. This means they cannot even spend above $1.7, ladies and gentlemen. This comes from the UN. Now, for our country, for people who cannot spend above $1.7, how will they be able to manage domestic tourism when they cannot even travel? I rest my case.
This is the High School Crossfire. We'll be back in a minute.